So some of you have already admitted that you're feeling a little fried. Like it's 8 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, and you're already like, my brain is gone. I can definitely feel a little bit like that as well, especially when you have a 2-year-old daughter who decides that she doesn't want to sleep. Yeah. So I want to teach you the strategy called brain dumps. And especially, it is really helpful when you start feeling overwhelmed, when you feel like you're worried or that you don't know what to do. And the strategy is called a brain dump, where you just write everything down and you just like dump it all out. This is really helpful when you're feeling lost and overwhelmed, and also at night when you can't go to sleep and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, do you remember that time I like farted in class and then the whole class laughed at me, and you just like think the weirdest things while you're trying to fall asleep? That's a really good time to do a brain dump as well. A brain dump is a strategy that falls under this idea of prioritizing. And so why is it important to prioritize? Why is it important to do brain dumps? Is because you can manage multiple tasks with different deadlines, and it creates a path forward, and it brings down the stress. So if you leave a bunch of tasks to their own, it can become the snowball effect, where your little thing picks up more speed, and then the next thing you know, you're all caught up in it, and then your attitude and your negativity is like affecting other people, and then you suck them into your negativity, and then you're just like, fine. Maybe that's just at my house. So I want you to go from that to breaking up the snowball into manageable little chunks so you can knock these things out, okay? So our goal is Will Ferrell from Elf, basically, okay? The antidote to overwhelm, we're going to watch this like 5 minutes. She does a really great job of explaining how to prioritize, because it's one of those things that like people say it and you're like, okay, but how do I do that? And so she gives you some steps of writing it all down, break it down, prioritize, and do one thing. So this is going to be our guiding motto this week, is writing it all down and breaking it down. Then we prioritize it and we'll do one thing. So let's just watch this video.
You know that feeling you get on a Sunday evening when you start to realize the weekend is ending and you start thinking about everything you have to do next week? That feeling of dread and overwhelm. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about one antidote to feeling overwhelmed. Hi everyone, Emma McAdam here. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And this is my baby girl, Grace. She's my sweetie. Okay, I have 2 other sweeties. So I'm making this video in my backyard while the kids play inside with my husband. So in this video, we're going to talk about overwhelm. Hey, did you know I've got 4 courses on udemy.com on mental health topics?
If that's something that is interesting to you, I've watched a couple of her stuff and they're pretty spot on, okay? They're things that you do so that you can do your other stuff better.
Now let's get back to the video. So when you get overwhelmed, do you feel like paralyzed, or do you freeze up or quit? Or on the other hand, do you like run amok, like trying frantically to do everything? Maybe you get irritable or defensive or procrastinate and avoid your tasks. When you start to have a bad day, do you go out of your way to bring to mind every single bad thing that has ever happened to you? Or do you just feel like there's so much to do it's pointless to start? Like these behaviors, they're all functional in the short term. They give us an excuse to shut down and curl up in bed, but they aren't going to help you in the long run. On the other hand, some people have a habit of sprinting around trying to do everything for everyone until they become completely exhausted, and then they shut down. And this might get some things done, but it isn't sustainable in the long run. We often develop these habitual responses to high levels of stress, and our tendency is to shrink back, withdraw, or protect oneself. Each one of these responses is a type of fight, flight, or freeze response, and it's triggered by an overload to the alerting part of the brain. This is the sympathetic nervous system. So these responses, they're natural, but they often get in the way of getting anything done. So take a minute right now and think about what are your behaviors when you feel overwhelmed, and how well are they working for you?
Okay, so what do you do when you feel overwhelmed? I lash out at my husband a little bit. I'll be like, leave me alone! Or I'll give him a warning. I'm like, I'm irrational right now. But also, I just get, it physically gets me. I have to take a walk or go for a run. What about you? Do you just check out when you get overwhelmed? So think about it.
The deep brain, so this is the brainstem and the limbic system. The deep brain is not built to multitask efficiency. Our cortex, so that's the front part of your brain, it can do that a little bit, but juggling multiple tasks freaks out our core brain. And this triggers an emotional response, this shutdown response. But fortunately, this is something we can counteract in a few simple ways. So the first thing you want to do is check yourself for faulty thinking that gets in the way of getting stuff done. So thoughts like, I should be able to handle all of this right now. There's this faulty idea that scientific discoveries were all this single eureka moment. And the reality is most tasks, great and small, are accomplished by degrees. The small progress that builds on other people's work or little bits of progress here and there. Another piece of faulty thinking that's going to stop you is all or nothing thinking. Hello. And this says, if I can't do it all right and get it all right, then I might as well not even try. Instead, practice big picture thinking paired with small actions. Here's another type of faulty thinking that's going to interfere with your ability to get things done when you're overwhelmed. This idea that I must always say yes, that I have to always do what other people want me to do. Instead, you and I, we've all got to learn to say no and to prioritize. We want to be able to maximize our short time in this life. We want to be able to do everything and take care of everyone. And we sometimes delude ourselves that it's even possible to do everything. Then we spread ourselves too thin and we multitask ourselves into non-productivity. I might be multitasking a little bit here.
I love that phrase, multitasking yourself into non-productivity. So we like to spread ourselves out super thin. So I'm going to check my email while I write this thing, while I watch this movie, while I text my friend. And then we don't do really any of it super well.
But it seems to be working so far. Instead, choose the important over the urgent and prioritize your tasks so that you don't feel like you have to do everything. Here's another type of thinking that's going to get in the way when you're overwhelmed. If you say, I'll do it when I don't feel blank about it. So I'll put myself out there when I don't feel scared. Or I'll start writing my book when I feel motivated. Sometimes we just need to start something before our confidence and our motivation builds. So let's talk about one antidote to being overwhelmed. First, write it all down.
That's what we're going to do.
Brain dump or mind map. And then break it down. Break it down into small, concrete steps. Next, prioritize. So choose what's most important and say no to the least important tasks or put them off for a little bit later. And then do one thing. Just do one thing. There is immense power in just doing one thing. The hardest parts of projects are the first 1% and the last 10%. But it's usually the first 1% that stops us. If we can just take that first step, we start to get motivated, and then we often complete the project. So, for example, I recently attended this seminar that discussed the enemies to writing. And fear, uncertainty, and self-doubt were some of the main enemies to getting writing done. And the antidote was to simply start writing and work on it a little bit at a time. So I have a system where I just force myself to write even when I don't feel like it. And I tell myself, just work on one section. And after I get started on one section, pretty soon I find myself going and going. I mean, this is usually 5 in the morning because that's the only time I have a chance to write when I have all these kids around here. But I get going and I don't want to stop. And then I get a bunch done. So, just get started. I love this little meme from Veronica Dearly, though I may have needed to edit it a bit because my children might watch my channel someday in the future. So if you're thinking, how the bleep am I going to get through the next week? Make a list of what you need to get done, put your pajamas on, get an early night, get ready to kick some butt, and remember, you've gotten through all the weeks up until now. You guys got this. So check out my video on catastrophe.
Okay, so that's where I'm going to end it. Is she gives us these steps of what to do, write it all down, break it down, prioritize, and do one thing. We're breaking it up into smaller chunks so that it fits with like our schedule. Okay. So I'm going to teach you then, how do we do a brain dump?